Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling a subject that's honestly pretty astonishing, ancient trepanation.
Right, we're talking about actual skull surgery, done thousands of years ago.
Yeah, intentionally drilling or cutting into someone's skull long before anything we'd recognize as modern medicine. It's wild.
For this deep dive, we've been digging into excerpts from ancient trepanation, skull surgery without modern tools, and the findings are really quite incredible.
Incredible feels like putting it mildly. I mean, just try to picture it, someone drilling a hole in your head, say, 4,000 years ago.
And you survive.
Exactly, and you actually survive it. That's what we're exploring. The goal here is to get a handle on how they did it, why, and, well, what it tells us about them.
Their knowledge, their beliefs, all of it.
So let's start right there. What exactly is trepanation based on the source?
Well, simply put, it's the act of cutting or drilling an opening into the skull bone. It's a deliberate procedure.
Sounds incredibly dangerous. But you mentioned findings. The source says we have actual proof, lots of it.
We do, yeah. Archaeologists have unearthed literally thousands of skulls all over the world, really Peru, Egypt, Europe.
Okay.
And these skulls showed the distinct marks of trepanation. But what's really striking is that many of them show signs of healing.
Healing? You mean like the person didn't just die on the spot, the bones started to mend?
Precisely. You can see bone regrowth around the edges of the hole. That's, pretty solid proof the person lived after the surgery.
Wow.
Sometimes, it seems, for quite a long time. It suggests they had some level of understanding, even if it wasn't like ours, about how to manage this kind of trauma.
That just blows my mind. So,
yeah.
What were they using for tools? Not exactly surgical steel back then.
No. The sources point to fairly basic things. Sharp stones, for instance, obsidian, flint flakes, things they could use to slowly scrape or maybe drill through the bone.
Slowly being the key word, I imagine.
Absolutely. And also tools made from bone, and then later, once they had it, bronze. It must have required incredible patience and skill.
Unbelievable skill. Okay, so the how is amazing. What about the why? Why take such a massive risk?
It seems like there were a few reasons. One pretty logical one is treating head injuries.
Yeah.
Maybe a skull fracture or trying to relieve pressure from swelling. Practical medical reasons.
Okay, that makes sense.
But the source also really emphasizes the connection back then between medicine and, well, spiritual beliefs.
Ah, right. The whole releasing evil spirits idea.
Exactly that. It seems opening the skull might have been seen as, like, a way to let bad spirits or harmful influences out of the body.
So it wasn't always just physical healing they were after?
It looks like a mix. Practical medical needs interwoven with these spiritual or maybe ritualistic motivations.
Which must make it even more complex. And thinking about the conditions. No anesthesia, right. No antibiotics.
None whatsoever. Just the skill of the practitioner, maybe some herbal knowledge we don't fully grasp, and, well, probably a lot of hope.
So how successful could they have possibly been? Did most people survive this?
Well, we can't know exact percentages, obviously. But the sheer number of skulls we find with significant healing, it really suggests they were surprisingly successful, more often than you'd intuitively think.
So they were adept at this. It wasn't just guesswork.
It seems that way.
Yeah.
Which, raises that question of what did they understand, implicitly perhaps, of the body to allow for that success.
Right. It's this sort of aha moment, realizing that despite lacking all our modern tools and germ theory and everything else,
they were still achieving outcomes. They were performing complex surgery, and people were walking away from it.
Which, if you step back and look at the bigger picture,
it really highlights this fundamental human thing, doesn't it?
Right.
That drive to figure things out, to fix medical problems, to innovate, even when your toolkit is, well, rocks and bones.
It shows that kind of ingenuity isn't just a modern phenomenon.
Not at all.
Okay, so let's quickly wrap this up. The key takeaway seems to be ancient people were performing this complex skull surgery, trepanation, across the globe.
And crucially, people often survived, which points to remarkable skill.
Yeah, remarkable skill and a blend of reasons behind it, from fixing injuries to maybe dealing with spiritual issues. It shows a different but not necessarily primitive approach to health.
Exactly. They were doing things that seem almost impossible to us now, showing this fascinating mix of practical skill and their worldview.
Which leads us to that final thought for you to consider. What other things that seem impossible to us today might ancient civilizations have achieved? And maybe more importantly, what can we learn from looking at their ingenuity and resilience when faced with limitations so vastly different from our own? Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.